Oh, hey. Hey guys, it's Mr. Light. You caught me eating. I was just looking for a healthy snack, and I managed to find this. No, it's not a candy bar. I got myself a Special K protein bar. This has some what's called whey protein. We have protein in some of the soybeans and different whey things that we eat. Can also give us another good thing of protein. In fact, I was looking on the back of this thing because, try to be healthy. It's got 180 calories. It's got, it says total fat. Fat? It's supposed to be a diet bar. This has fat? I don't like that. What is fat? Last time when we were talking about sugars, we talked about all of the bad things that can happen when you have too much sugar. We talked about tooth decay, weight gain, kind of the hypertension, some of the things that happen when you have too much sugar. Well, what happens if you have too much fats? One of the things that we think about when we talk about fats is we talk about our heart. Your heart is a muscle right here in your chest, and it beats all day long. Do you know what your heart does in your body? Well, your heart pushes blood all the way through your body. It pushes it through veins and arteries to all the different pieces, all the way to your fingertips, your toes, everything needs blood in order to survive. So your heart pumps this all the way through your body. You can actually feel this if you look at the veins in your wrist and you put a couple of fingers here, you can actually feel your pulse. Your pulse is that blood pumping through your body all the time. That blood flows through these arteries and veins. Arteries and veins are kind of similar to this straw. They're hollow and they're like tubes that the blood flows through. Let's see what happens when we add some of these fats to our tube. If I take some of this vegetable oil and I dip my tube inside that vegetable oil, what's going to happen? Well, I can see that this fat, so the oil actually drips right out of the straw. There's still a little bit of oil inside the straw. It kind of coated the straw. That's going to make it harder for the blood to go through because it's got some fatty stuff in there. What about the butter? If I stick my straw in butter and pull it out, ooh, look at that. Does the butter fall out of the straw, or does it stick a little bit more? Well, it kind of sticks a little bit more. Which one's going to stop the blood flowing quicker? The solid or the liquid? Well, the solid's going to clog things up a little bit more. That makes solid fats a little bit more dangerous to your body and not as healthy. We often talk about heart attacks or what we call cardiac arrest because we get too much fatty buildup in our arteries. So we want to be very careful with solid fats. We find solid fats in some of the meats that we eat. If you've ever had a steak and it's got a bunch of fat on it, that would be a solid fat. In hot dogs, hamburgers, all of those have solid fats in them. That's not to say that liquid fats are really good for you, because they're really not, but they are better for you than the solid fats. Let's think about some of those foods we could use as switcheroos for some of the foods that have the solid or even the liquid fats in them. See if you and your parents can come up with some foods that have high in fat content, and then what are some foods that we could have instead? Here's an experiment I would like you to do. You're going to need a couple of materials. I got a bunch of stuff here. You don't need all this stuff, but let me show you what I got. You're going to need some different foods. I chose some crackers, some goldfish, I got a Rice Krispie treat here, and some Cheetos. I'm looking for some foods that are probably what I think might be higher in fat, and some of the foods, this one even says 65% less fat. So, these are all kind of fatty foods, but you might use something, maybe some banana chips, or something that's supposed to be a little healthier for you too, because we want to have some foods that you can compare. There's a worksheet that goes along with this that you're going to want to pull up too, because you're going to follow along with that and kind of make a hypothesis, kind of get into an experiment, and then we're going to see which of these foods has a lot more fat. So how are we going to do this? You're going to need the different types of foods. You're going to need some kind of a material, okay? Somewhat absorbent material. I've got a paper towel here. I don't think that's going to work as well, but I think you could use it in a pinch. Paper might work okay, but it's going to kind of be harder to see. But if it's something that you have to use, I think that would work as well. I found this manila envelope. I think this will work pretty well, but I think the best thing to use is probably going to be this paper bag. So if you have paper bags, I think that would be great, but any of those other materials will work as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut up this paper bag into little squares that are about 6 inches a piece. Okay, now that I have my squares of paper bag, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of my foods, and I'll just start with these goldfish here. So I'm going to take one of my goldfish, and I want to get about the same size for each of the foods because we want to keep variables consistent, so I'll try to keep the mass about the same. So I think I'm actually going to use 2 goldfish for this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my goldfish on my paper here. And there's a couple of ways in which you can do this. We can strike the goldfish on the paper, meaning we can simply just rub them back and forth. If we do it that way, we have to be sure that when we rub back and forth the Rice Krispie treat or the baked Lays, that we also do it the same amount, because we want to get the same amount of fat or the same amount of chances of getting fat on the paper. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold this over. And actually, I think it's a little more fun to kind of smash them up. So I'm just going to push this down, kind of smash these up onto my paper. Okay, now, if I do it this way, I'm also going to need to smash up the other ones with the same amount of pressure and the same amount of force. But if I push down as hard as I can, then the amount of force should be about the same. I can already see that there's some it's getting dark on the outside of the paper. What do you suppose that is? Well, if I open this up, I'll see, let me get rid of the crumbs. Please be careful with your getting dirty. You'll see that the paper actually has some, it looks like wetness on it. Now that wetness is a combination of probably 2 things. It's a combination of the oils and the fats that were inside of that goldfish, and it's probably a combination of water that was also inside the goldfish. What I'm most interested in is just the fats. So what can I do to get rid of the water so that I can only see the fats? Do you have any ideas? Well, one idea is to let the water evaporate. If the water evaporates out, then all that will be left is the fats. And I can start to compare how much fat is on this sheet of paper with maybe one that I do with the baked Lays or one that I do with the Cheetos. Okay? So what you're going to do on your worksheet is you're going to make some predictions about which foods you think have the most fat in them. Then you're going to perform this experiment with 6 different foods. Try to pick 2 or 3 foods that are a little more healthy, that are maybe said to be healthy, and then a couple of foods that are probably said not to be as healthy. Okay? Typically things like chips, stuff that you can crunch up, is probably the best thing to do. If you have any questions about this, you'll then be sure that you ask your teacher. You'll then look at the amount of fat and compare how much you have left over on the sheet of paper so that you can see which ones actually laid out the amount of fat. Answer some questions at the end, and then you'll be ready to turn this into your teacher. So I'm going to leave this to sit overnight along with all of the other foods that I do. I better probably label this one goldfish so that I know which food this was, so that when I compare tomorrow, I'll know which food it is. So follow along in your worksheet, perform your experiment, and see if you can figure out which foods in your closet have the most fat in them.